It's so fun to play in scraps. Today we're going to play with teal and purple. And I have foundation squares that I cut from old sheets. They're perfect and ready to go. As I go through my scraps to decide what to use, I try to get a nice variation. And in my scraps, they're just different odd size pieces. So sometimes I actually cut strings or strips so that I can use them, and corners to use in the corner part of making these blocks. What width am I going to want my strings? All the widths. It doesn't matter, up to 3 inches, although I don't usually use that wide of one, but any size. I'm just going to take them for now. I'll cut them down later if I think I should. Making these rectangle string quilts, it's so fun. Notice I'm putting the top down and sewing on the back side of the sheet because it's less likely to show up through the fabric. Plus, it helps that these are sweet, light prints on the sheet, so there will be no see-through or show-through. Notice where the corners are. I'm getting it so that it's a seam allowance past the corner because that's where the purple will join when we do the purple part. So there's a lot of tricks to making this block. Mostly because it's rectangular, it's different than we've made before. I'm putting down the first piece of teal and then I'm matching a second piece. I'm putting right sides together so that when we sew that seam, all the right sides will be up. I take how many I need and I just go through and choose different fabrics, put them on and trim them to size, and I just keep going until I have them all stacked up. So I do however many I need and then I go to the sewing machine and sew them. And I'm just going to show you a few. When I do it, I do mine all at once. I want to get all of the teal sewn before I ever open my purple box. I am sewing these seams and they don't have to be exact. When we trim them, we'll square them up a bit because I've made these foundations to be 8 by 11. So when we trim them, they will become a little bit smaller. After you sew everything on, you go over to the ironing board and you press them. And this is where you make sure everything is flat and straight and lining up. It's okay if it's at an odd angle or if the strings aren't straight, that will all work itself out. But you want it to be flat and straight as far as being pressed goes. As I choose the next fabric, I'm looking for variety and I'm cutting at an angle to save pieces. I put small pieces over to the side to be in my crumb pile and I just keep going. It's really fun to choose what you want next and to check. I'm checking if that third last piece is going to cover. These are an odd shape and they fill really fast. They're a little bit faster to do, at least this size, than when we do square ones. As I finish it, I trim it off and I save the big pieces for crumbs or for maybe using in the corners of some of them. And I pile them up as I go. Getting to the part where most of them need triangles is the most exciting part. You feel like you're making such great progress. So you just trim and get ready and do triangles in all variations. This one has a little problem. When I test it, it's poking over. So I fix it by scooching it a little the other direction and making sure it stays there while it's sewn on so that it covers beautifully. These blocks are a variation of a string block, and because they're rectangular shape, there is this one thing right here that you need to know. In order to make diamonds or anything but a triangle shape when you're done, you need to have blocks that go both directions. They're not the same as you just saw when I turned that. So one set of blocks has to go from corner to corner in one direction. The other set of blocks has to go from corner to corner in the other direction. So you want half the blocks one way, half the blocks the other way in order to play with them in fun ways when you're finished. You're glad you watched this video to this part because if you missed that, you're going to just only be able to set them as triangles. But this will make it so much fun. We're going to set ours in diamonds. So as we sew the purple on, we can sew both sets. They can mix up now because you can't goof them. Once they're one way and the other way, they simply are one way and the other way and they don't move. As we add purple, we just do the same thing as we did with the teal. We add strip after strip. We try to vary the color. We make it happy as we go. When you get to the corner, it's really important because corners touch together not to make them all the same. For whatever reason, fabric variation in the corner makes the piece feel scrappy and happy and delightful. So be sure to pay attention to your corners. I also like to not make my corners tiny. I want them to be pretty big because in the trimming process of this block, we're going to cut some of the fabric off. So I want it to be big enough that it still shows a good amount in the corner. Watch that as we trim it and you'll be able to tell. So here are the two sets of blocks, and one goes one direction, one goes the other, and now we're going to do the fun part. This part really is the magic of this block. We're going to trim it. This isn't the same as trimming a square block, so I am measuring so that I can get the point and I won't have to think every time I go to trim. So I have a bigger ruler and I'm going to trim these down to 10.5. That's what I'm marking here, and before I marked 7.5. So one direction is 10.5, one direction is 7.5, and I mark in both directions, both ways, so that I can use these as I trim corner to corner. So I'm going to try really hard to get my blocks to be pretty good in the corner of the center of between the teal and the purple, but close enough is close enough. The point I marked touches the seam between the teal and the purple. And then I flip it over and I line it up again. It has to be lined up exactly so that that center line is between the dot I made and the corner. And this ruler has, of course, a line that shows corner to corner. So that's not what matters. What matters is the circle that I made. That is what has to touch the corner. So one of them was 7.5 by 10. The other was 10.5 by 7. Either way I'm trying to measure, depending on which block I'm doing or how I'm doing it, it's not going to matter. What matters is I line the circle up that is the match for between the purple and the teal. The great thing about string quilts is every step makes it more beautiful and more fun than the last. So to lay it out, it's just the usual rules. Lay it out. If anything's bugging you, change it or move it. And if it's not bugging you, leave it. It's just happy and fun. And I decided to make mine into diamonds with the purple as the focus. And yet as it grows, you see the teal diamonds also. I kept my blocks separated so I could know which side I was going to use, and it just is faster that way rather than mix them up and search and rescue them. So lay it out, get it ready, and I sew it, and here it is sewn in rows and it's working out. But I want to show you the thing that I didn't show you the first time I made a string quilt. Our very first video was a string quilt video. It has almost 500,000 views. Thanks for watching. We didn't show you how to finish the quilt, and so we're showing you now. I use very thin batting. I use a backing, and the backing it can be any weight you want. It can be cotton, or you can put minky on, whatever you want to do. And then I simply quilt it on my long arm. These can also be finished on domestic machines, or they could be tied. I've seen many beautiful string quilts that are tied. As I show you the quilting at the end, I want you to look that I quilt really close to all of the corners, wherever it's thick. It's not hard to go over. It looks beautiful quilted. It's finished, it's bound, and it's so cuddly and wonderful. Remember when we cut these and it had crumbs? We have a video that we already put out on what to do with those crumbs. So you can watch that next if you'd like. Stay merry and creative.